Just like the street lights lit this town, like a fire in a blaze, gotta burn it down. Can't be afraid to leave this out. We got this far, don't know how. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down the night. Coming just like the sunrise. You know that we gonna light it up tonight. We gonna light it up tonight. We gonna light it up just like the sunrise. We gonna light it up now. Just like a spark that's breaking out. Can't make a stop, can't turn back now. We know that there's no room for doubt. No, we can't turn back now. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down the night. Coming just like the sunrise. You know that we gonna light it up tonight. We gonna light it up tonight. We gonna light it up just like the sunrise. We gonna light it up now.
Ember. Oh, Ember.
Miss Ember.
Oh, great, Ember. Tell me what I'm doing.
Hey, Ember. How you doing?
Appreciate you, Ember. Love Ember. She's great.
We will be yelling at Ember.
Bottom of the barrel Ember bullshit.
Oh my God, Ember. Ember. Ember.
Ember.
Ember's.
Ember.
Ember. Ember.
Ember.
Ember.
We love you, Ember.
You rock at that, Ember.
We're neighbors, Ember.
Ember is the queen.
What's up, Ember?
I see you, Ember.
But hey, Ember is hot.
Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. I hear there's something political afoot today, Lil. Do you know anything about that?
Yes, there is. There is politicality after today's show.
What, after today's show, you say? Like the people
Yes.
coming here from the Daily Atheist Morning Show could like stick around through this show and then watch another show after this one that you're on? That's wild.
Mhm.
It's almost
I
like we
just
set it
thought-
up that way on purpose or something. Well, sort of.
Something like that. I'm just all
I
over
think
the place.
politicality is actually older than this show, even though, the personalities on screen have changed a bit.
Mhm.
Details. But yes, this stream will take you right over to politicality on Lil's channel immediately following this show, assuming we make it the whole 2 hours, which, as always, asterisk on that. As I have medical issues from time to time. It hasn't made me cancel a show yet, but it's never entirely out of the question. So we're going to do our best today, folks. But thank you all so much for joining us. It's lovely to see you all. It's especially lovely to have Lil here, who has her own emoji and is dressed for the occasion of having her own emoji, I guess.
I just got this in like yesterday, and I'm so stoked about it. I was just like, yes, I need that.
I know you have so many shirts. I don't know. I know that like people are supposed to have lots of shirts. It just
I honestly, like, I got a whole bunch of shirts probably, like, within the last 6 months, but that's because, like, I had, like, plain black t-shirts, and that was it. And I'm like, I need to get, like, shirts with stuff on them. I need to have some personality in my clothes.
I know the feeling. My wardrobe used to consist of, like, my work uniforms and, like, 2 super basic t-shirts. Because, well, that's not entirely true. My previous Ember clothes had a lot of button-down shirts because of the, professional photographer thing. You've got to look nice for a bunch of different occasions, mostly weddings, but sometimes other stuff. And so I had to have a variety of things. But in a way, those were uniforms too, because I didn't wear them except for work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
I mean, yeah, also, like, a ton of my clothes, like, people who've watched for a bit know that I had to leave Indiana in, like, kind of a hurry, and so, like, a lot of my clothes got left behind, too. So I ended up with not that much. So I'm like, yeah, I gotta need to rebuild that.
It's rough. It's rough. But you know what makes it better? Super chat. Like from Fro, who sent us 20 knocks. Thank you, Fro. And says, have a good show. HOT Ember. I thought it was just like stressed because it's very small on my monitor. But seeing it blown up on a super chat, I see there's periods after at least 2 of the letters. So I assume it's an abbreviation for something. What do you suppose it's an abbreviation of?
I can think of a few different things.
You know what? I'll let the chat speculate on that one because it could be fun. I don't have more clothing for you today, but I do have new stuff, or more precisely, old stuff that's more accessible. I am very aware that the new pride flags are much pricier than the generic pride flags that you get, where it's just colored stripes. And I know everybody understands that the new pride flags have a lot more detail, like there's stars and suns and moons, and there's detail. It's not just color. So of course they're going to be more expensive. But we live in a time when people like myself can't afford a loaf of bread. So expensive isn't super helpful. And pluses and minuses. So I'm trying to find alternative options. I can't make the flags cheaper because that's what it costs to produce flags with the detail necessary to do that. But what I can do is stickers. I found there's this producer that works with my store that can make 5. Well, the whole thing is 5.5 inches, but the sticker itself is 5 inches. That's a big fucking sticker, comparatively speaking.
It is.
Let me see here. Like, here's a sticker from an event that I went to a few years ago. This is 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches, right? So like a 5-inch sticker would be like the size of my fucking hand. Maybe not quite all the way to the tips of my fingers, but you get the idea. And it's $6. Like, it's not the cost of a loaf of bread, but it's a lot more affordable. It's literally 1/5 the price of the flags. I know it's not the same, but also it's a sticker, so you can put them on things. So I've produced stickers for the original full-on pride flag, the lesbian flag, which just came out yesterday, the arrow flag, which is new this week, the ace flag, the trans flag, the intersex flag, and every flag going forward. I'll also release a sticker version so that it'll be more accessible for people. I'm doing my best, folks. If you think of other ideas, I also looked into enamel pins. That's a no-go. Those are way too expensive. I looked into patches. I haven't found a patch that can embroider. I haven't found a patch that can embroider in the level of detail necessary to make these things be anything other than a splotch of color. I'm looking into alternatives, and I love the alternatives because, like, I mean, I love pins and buttons and patches and all the things too, but like nothing has been viable yet. Tommy asks, are there ally flags in the collection? Not yet. I have to make these one at a time. Some days, on good days, I can manage 1 flag in a single day. One day I managed 2 in the same day, but that was like remarkable. It was a Monday when I couldn't do a bonus show already anyway, because between this show and Job and Jugs, I'd already used up both of my lives for the day without screwing over the algorithm. But honestly, I'm so close to just not caring about the algorithm and just going live whenever the fuck I want to. I'm sure people would be very offended. In any case, it's on the list. Ally flags. I have like a list of flags. Sometimes it's based on the holiday. Sometimes it's based on a thing. Sometimes it's based on demand. Like the ace flag had a lot of demand. Like so many people wanted that one. So yeah, I'm doing my best to get them out there, and to also try to make something of a viable business out of it. Because like I'm not kidding. I can't afford bread. So, I'm doing what I can. Yes, Ever's Fun with Flags show. It's mostly dancing. Oh my goodness. All right. So if you don't know where to find those, just head over to betterthanumber.com, where I keep everything else, including my links. And there's a link to the store here. There's a link to the store. Well, the main link to the store is here on the navigation bar. Just right at the end, store, bloop, and it just takes you to the store. Ta-da! It's magic. But enough of that for right now. Today we're going back in time again. We're going back to Göbekli Tepe, and I want to tell you why. We know that the oldest clay tablets. Let's try that again, Ember. We know that the oldest clay tablets, not gel caps, are from Sumeria, and that's clearly writing. We even know how it developed from a simple tally system to including descriptive characters to a full grammar and syntax structure. But while those were the first tablets, was it the first writing? Probably not. Durable writing is very useful for stuff that needs to last. And while the Egyptians didn't invent papyrus until a certain point, we know from being humans, from having been children ourselves, from raising children and seeing other humans will write on literally anything. If you give them writing, they'll figure it out, and they will write on everything, and always have. Exhibit A, cave paintings. Humans just write on. So once you have a writing system, it's going to go everywhere. Now, what do you need for a thing to count as writing? Well, I had the definitions pulled up and they escaped me.
Symbols that mean something?
Please. You know what? I can take this off the screen. We don't need this anymore.
However, if you would like to see some really interesting early Sumerian writing, including complaint tablets, I have a really cool video on my channel about it.
Poor Ian Nasir. He'll never, ever, ever live that down.
Dude is a legend. He is a legend at this point. So
it's true.
I give him the credit. He might have been an ass, but God, he's a legend. So
it's so funny when my kids think they're being edgy and they make jokes about inferior quality copper. And I go, Ian Nasir, how the fuck do you know? I'm like, I'm older than you. I'm almost as old as Ian Nasir. I really
it's one of those things that me and my best friend, we loved memes about it for years. And when I did that episode, we suddenly found that we both loved memes about it and had no idea. It's just like it's everywhere. It's so good. There's some really good ones.
It's one of the few memes that made the jump from Reddit onto Facebook, and it just took off. There's like whole groups that started because of the meme. Like oh shit, what is it called? Like extraordinary memes for ancient not teens or something like that. They love the weird rhyme schemes on Facebook. It's a whole thing. Anyhow, but yes, Ian Nasir, legendary lol cow meme, poor soul who thought he could get away with inferior copper and is now immortalized in a fucking clay tablet. But
because he kept his hate mail. The dude kept his hate mail.
In fairness, I have recently come to understand the wisdom of keeping your hate mail, because you never know when you're going to need receipts about someone who suddenly tries to kill you, for example.
Yeah.
It's a bit of an oof. Like, dear police, if I'm found dead, this person sent me hate mail.
Mm-hmm.
Or something. My goodness. All right. So the Google tells us that a thing is writing, the characteristic, the diagnostic criteria are writing must be representative of language, which is different from art. Writing uses the symbols, whether they're letters or characters or hieroglyphs, to represent spoken language and thought systems. It's not, like a drawing of a booby, for example, isn't necessarily about the booby. It could be representative of the boobies for some reason, things like that. Or like we were talking about with Deviant yesterday, how the Ankh developed from the sandal strap somehow,
Mm-hmm.
it's a symbolic meaning, but the meaning isn't just representative, it's related to language. So to be writing, it has to have a connection to the spoken form of the language. There has to be a language it's referring to. Then you've got your physical inscription. It must be recorded in some medium. It has to be on paper or stone or a digital screen or something that makes it tangible and transferable, which makes sense. That's handy too. It has to be intentional. It has intentionality and structure, which is to say, when you draw the letter A, it's always a letter A. It'll have, different shape, different lengths and styles and whatnot, but it has to meet certain recognizable criteria. And you create that with intention for the purpose of the reader being able to tell it's a letter A, because that's part of the communication. The audience connection, it acts as a bridge conveying meaning across time and space from a writer to a reader. So if you try to write something and no one can read it, it's not really writing, which is interesting. It has some interesting philosophical implications. And lastly, it says good writing specifically, according to scholastic books, relies on ideas, organization, voice, word choice, sentence fluency, conventions, and presentation. Of course, you can also have bad writing, but again, it's not just about the letters. It's about the translation of the spoken form of the language into a tangible form. So the ideas are the essential element of it. And I want you to hang on to that. The essential element is taking the idea and putting it into a physical form that will still enable the idea to be communicated, because we're going to be relying on that later. Okay, so yeah, to get right into it, I came across this interesting idea a little while after our original Göbekli Tepe episode. The algorithm saw I'd mentioned Göbekli Tepe or something, and showed me this thing. And it's this fella who has this idea that there is definitional, super ancient writing in Göbekli Tepe. Now, I've had a thought along these lines myself. I'm like, some of the things that are inscribed, yes, they're like serpents and monkeys and lizards and all sorts of things, but like they're not just there for artistic reasons. They seem to be there for symbolic reasons. Like it's the same lizard on this pillar and this pillar and this wall, It's not just a lizard, but it's shaped like the same way hieroglyphics as letters have to have certain characteristics, the same way the letter A has to have certain characteristics. They're clearly the same in that sense of duplication, because it's an idea being conveyed. So maybe there's something to that. So I watched the video and well, I watched part of the video, to be fair. I tried to trace back the source, and I did find the source, and we'll get to that soon. But first, I want to lead you down the same trail I started with and see if we all arrive at the same place. It could be fun. I should turn his volume on. There we go.
Appears, civilization emerges, history begins. But neat stories are usually wrong, and recent evidence shows that writing may be far older than we thought. So here's the uncomfortable question: why wouldn't early humans have written language? And if they did, what?
That is a question. Why wouldn't early humans? Like we know language has developed and complexified over thousands of years. the writing we have shows that the further back you go, the simpler language is, in a sense. Like, for example, when you're learning Latin, a lot of the words have like 17 different completely unrelated meanings. And it's not that they had 17 different completely unrelated meanings. It's that our more derived language has taken that single concept and broke it into 17 different specific things. But at the time, if we reversed places and brought somebody from the Latin speaking world to today, they would see these 17 different things and go, why are you being so overly pedantic? These are all the same thing, you know? So it works the other way around. But the language, it doesn't just change, it increases in complexity. It's an evolutionary process. And so as you go backwards in time, it becomes more base, right? It gets simpler. And the further back you go, the worse that gets. So like you take the ancient Latin world where 17 different things all have one word, and you go back another couple thousand years to the kingdom of for example, where 17 different Latin things all have the same word in what language would that be? I want to say Ugaritic, but that's from the city of Ugarit, not the city of Whatever.
I think it's just usually Sumerian. I think it's just kind of thrown under that umbrella, maybe. I'm not entirely sure.
Generic Sumerian.
There's a really interesting fact about Latin that I think it was in the Renaissance period that there were two royals that were getting married, didn't speak the same language, but they both spoke Latin. But then they found when they tried to speak Latin to each other, they could not understand each other because they pronounced the word so differently. It's like,
I hate when that happens. I mean, we've seen that happen with English speakers, right? Like a person from Scotland talking to a person from the outback of Australia.
Yeah.
And us kind of in the middle can't understand either one of them.
Yeah, we're like, huh?
Yeah, it's sort of the same thing. It's pretty wild that way. But yeah, let's say Sumerian, for example. Like evolution, it's not linear. It's not like every 2,000 years you get 17 different more concepts or something. It's not a direct correlation. It's just a general trend. And so it might be three things all had the same word. But if you go further and further back in time, more and more thousands of years ago, the more base the language becomes. The simpler it is, the fewer words there are, because the fewer concepts there are that have been able to be conveyed. It's not that humans understand less things. It's that we need time to develop specificity, to require disambiguation, and to get people to agree on what to call the different diverging concepts. And that's the key with language. You need both a sender and a receiver. If I say, the word candle, you have to know what I mean by a candle, or I have to be able to explain it. It doesn't work if there's no understanding on the other side. It's just me making noises,
Yeah.
It's an oof. Right-handed Sith points out, then there's snow. We just have snow, and an Eskimo or Inuit have 40 words for snow. Fun thing about that, the Inuits need to get good, those scrubs, because scientists have over 117 words for snow. And I say over because it was 117 in the 90s, which was the last time I checked. And I'm sure they've come up with more since then.
The fuck? Seriously? 117?
You need to have this. It's exactly what we're talking about. It's the need for specificity to disambiguate between related concepts, right? Because you've got lake effect snow, which is like a little bull, and then you've got like flurry snow, which is where you get most of your standard snowflakes, and then you've got all the different shapes of flakes and the weather conditions that give rise to them, and you've got different temperature ranges that each one can form in, and there's so many other factors. What kind of snow you're seeing can tell you a ton about the current weather, the general climate of the area, and so much other stuff. It's really fascinating. but it's also really, really down to minute details. For most practical purposes, hey, it's snowing, you know?
Although, like, my brand of science tends to be fairly simple. We have black holes, dark matter, dark energy, and it's just like, whatever the fuck it is, it is.
Well, I mean, we do the same thing there, right? Like, we've got regular matter and dark matter. Or you could say we've got baryonic matter and non-baryonic matter, which is just another way to say the same thing, but not really, because they refer to different specific concepts.
Yeah,
but also
true.
within baryonic matter, you can break that down. You know, you've got your quarks, you've got your leptons, you've got your ups and your downs and your neutrinos, and nobody knows what the fucking neutrinos are doing. They're
Actually,
So,
now that you
yeah,
think about it, now I'm thinking about all the different kinds of black holes, and I'm just like, yeah, actually.
Exactly.
There's a
We
lot
have
of different
broad
kinds of black
category
holes.
terms that are fine for everyday use, but when you get down to the specifics, things get really complicated really fast.
Oh,
So it's fun that way, or something. I don't know. It reminds me of wizards. This old medieval idea about wizards who know, like, secret languages, not just more languages, but secret languages. And they know, like, if you use the secret languages in a certain way, combined with a certain physical ritual, you can cause certain things to happen. It's almost like having a programming code to the universe, but before programming codes were really a thing. You know, it's like if you understand more, it's like unlocking some of that secret knowledge. The more you learn, the more you can dig into. And technically, a lot of this we can't do anything practical with. Like, if I knew which of the 117 flavors of snow was currently falling outside, or I knew, you know, which kind of black hole was most likely at the center of the galaxy, it's not going to change anything about my day-to-day life. But every so often, usually at Dr. Ben's trivia night, knowledge like that does come in handy. Sometimes you can do something with it. And in those instances when you can, it can really make a big difference. Not just winning points at Dr. Ben's trivia night, which is Fridays at 9:30 Eastern, by the way. Immediately after the Bible study that we do here on this channel at 8 p.m. Eastern, by the way.
And the funny thing is, I usually tend to be very, very good at trivia because I have a ton of useless knowledge. And oh my god, his trivia kicks my ass every time.
Clara says, my mom called. She cut you off at something to make it tangible and trans. Oh my. JJ says neutrinos are not doing much, actually. Well, yeah, they're kind of lazy. They're not
Just
very active.
Just a little bit.
I mean, you know, if I were a neutrino and I see all these crazy electrons and positrons and shit zipping around, I might, you know, mostly just pass on everything too. Maybe.
Yeah.
Well, okay. The thing of neutrinos is that, like we were talking about a little bit yesterday with one of our surprise tangents, is that for particles at that level, because they're not really particles in the normal sense of thinking of like solid things, it's a wave particle duality kind of thing. They're actually a wave that we can conceive of as being a particle for mathematical purposes, because it makes our math easier, but they're not actually particles. To get them to interact with something, it has to be something in the right range, right? Like an electron will always annihilate with a positron, but only with a positron. Same sort of thing. A neutrino will only interact under exactly the right conditions. And usually that's either meeting another identical neutrino, because a neutrino is also an anti-neutrino because they're neutral. It's fucking weird. But the other, and this is one of the ways that matter can just pop out of nothing, by the way, is neutrinos can also spontaneously generate, because when you hit two waves against each other, you generate a particle and antiparticle, because each wave contains, effectively, using that particleization model, that wave particle duality, every wave contains half a particle and half an antiparticle. And when they meet just right, then the two half particles combine and create actual particles. But I digress. I know I'm such a nerd.
So am I. So
neutrinos mostly only interact with matter. Big asterisk on the mostly, but they mostly only interact with matter during neutron creation or destruction, which is when a proton absorbs an electron to become a neutron, or a neutron emits an electron to become a proton. In order to balance the mass of that equation, the neutron, formerly or to be, whichever direction you're going, has to either absorb or emit an antineutrino to balance the mass of the electron. And so you cannot force an electron into a proton to create a neutron without that antineutrino. You have to add the antineutrino. We've tried it. You cannot do it. It will not go in. But as soon as you add the antineutrino, bloop, they just click together. And vice versa. Every single time a neutron emits an electron to become a proton, we detect, well, to the extent of our ability to detect, an antineutrino being emitted. So yeah, it's one of those things. Neutrinos seem to only exist for the purposes of making the math work. But and that's all they do, is just interact to make the math work. The rest of the time, they just go right through matter like it's not there. So that the whole reason I explained that was because of, I'm explaining the joke. Jokes are funnier when you explain them. That neutrinos just pass on all the matter. They just pass right through it. They pass on all. It's fine.
Because yeah, Claire just said, how did language stream end up on this topic? I don't mind, just curious. We're
because
nerds.
People come here for the tangents,
and we're nerds.
That's why we have the emojis. Yep. I mean, technically, we have them in the store too. The shirt. I'm just here for the tangents. It's one of the things. The store is mostly flags now, but I've kept the tangent shirt.
I would show off my hoodie, but I currently have a puppy dog sleeping on it, so. And the rule is don't wake the dogs.
That's fair, but you know, there is one good way to make sure. No, that's not going to work. I was going to say I'm looking for transition to my water commercial, and I was like, you could just throw water on the dog, but then you'd get your hoodie wet, and that. So you know what? Let's just have a drink. Hey folks, I've been working hard on my health, and so far I've lost over 140 pounds. A huge part of good health is hydration. That's why I'm thrilled to partner with Epic Water Filters. Check this out. Not only can you say goodbye to expensive bottled water, but these filters are made in the US, so no tariffs, and they're made to fit your life. From these lovely pitchers I can fill from, to sink units, to portable filters that fit in your reusable bottle. With Epic, I can refill from nature's water sources and not have to worry about bacteria and whatnot. But also, send back a used filter to be responsibly recycled, and they'll send you a free replacement, saving you and the earth even more. Want to save a ton of money, be healthier, and build a better world? Head to epicwaterfilters.com and enter code EMBER15 at checkout for 15% off. Don't settle for random water. Upgrade to Epic. All right. Now we're hopefully slightly more composed. In truth, I had to turn my heater down again. I was melting. I was like, I'm trying to put it off, and I'm like, nope, it's just because, you know, heaters, infamously, they have little thermostats, but there's like a 20-degree range the thermostat may kick off at. Like it'll wait until it's too cold to turn on, and it'll, you know, if it's set to like say 70 degrees, it'll be 90 degrees before it goes, oh hey, it's warm enough, and finally turns up. So I have to turn it down from time to time.
Hey, it's 72 here right now in February. It's too warm.
I'm telling you, I'll trade you. I think we're starting to warm up. It is currently 35 in freedom units. So
I would take 35.
All right, JJ's like, are we gonna go back play at some point? All right, we'll do the thing.
What does that mean for how we view prehistory? Hi guys, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Michael. I have a degree in ancient history, and on this channel, we discuss the unexplainable mysteries of our past. Let's get into it.
We also, well, I don't know that we discuss the unexplainable mysteries because we try to explain things. I mean, we do say I don't know often, but we will also try to like analogize and give context to facilitate understanding and learning and so forth. Like, if a thing is truly unexplainable, there's not much point in trying to explain it, you know? But hey.
Writing is not just communication, it is external memory. It allows ideas to exist outside the human mind and survive long after the person who created them is gone. Before writing.
That's one of the coolest things. When I first started reading, when I was, somewhere between 2 and 3, it occurred to me that I was reading books written by people who are long dead. And I'm like, the fact that their thoughts, not just their knowledge, but their thoughts, their feelings, their experiences are encoded in a format that has survived their death so that it can be conveyed to me across time and space. Like a person who lived in England in the 1800s, for example. Not travel notwithstanding, I would never get to meet this person. And also, I'm being very poor. I don't get to travel all that much as I love travel. So there's a lot of information that I would never have access to except for writing, which is pretty fucking... Now, we can do the same thing. Like, for example, as long as YouTube continues to exist, this video will be here long after I'm dead. And we kind of do the same thing. I can convey information, but also my thoughts, my feelings, my understandings, and so forth. But like writing, we've had that for so long. It's just so cool.
Knowledge had a built-in expiration date. It had to be memorized, repeated constantly, passed down orally, generation after generation. When people died, knowledge was always at risk of dying with them. But writing changes that relationship entirely. It allows information to accumulate rather than reset. Laws can persist, calendars can be standardized, rituals can remain consistent across centuries. That is why historians treat writing as the...
It's why we get the spell books, to make sure the rituals are standardized. Because the gods, we know from certain holy books that the gods get awfully mad when you use the wrong flavor of incense.
Oh, yes.
Dividing line between prehistory and history. Prehistory is the time before written records. For example, we call Ice Age societies prehistoric not because they lacked culture or intelligence, but because they left no surviving written texts. History begins when writing appears. But...
And that's definitional, though. It's important to remember there is no specific time. It's just a definition, an arbitrary definition at that. But there is some reasonable basis for it. So I guess it's not completely arbitrary, but like we could have chosen to put that line anywhere else. So it's sort of like an after-the-fact justification for what was an arbitrary line. Definitionally, history is that which is written. So you can't have history before you have writing, because you don't have people writing about their own time until you have writing.
Notice the quiet implication hiding inside that definition. If writing existed but didn't survive, then we would still call that period prehistory. Not because nothing happened, but because nothing lasted. And that brings us to the critical question. How exactly do we decide when writing first appears? Officially, writing began around 3...
And this is an interesting thing, because since written records, it's not when writing appears, it's when there are records that we have access to. So our ability to access historical records changes where we decide another culture's history begins. So like if we go to ancient Sumeria and we find a tablet from 6,000 years ago, that moves where the line between prehistory and current era begins for that culture. Even though it doesn't change what happened with the culture, it changes our access to it. But since we're the ones describing it, the line moves by hundreds of years. It's wild. Right-Ended Sith says, are you forgetting oral history? I am not. The reason writing differs from oral history is because oral history, it's subject to change, to error, to repetitional problems. There are some big pluses to it. For example, when you're telling a story of how the gods became angry over something, you can convey emotion to it, and you can add additional meaning that words alone can't convey. But there's also that human tendency to play a telephone game and change it a bit. If it's written down, that stops happening. So yes, you can have an oral history, technically speaking, but the reason we put the line on writing, and again, this is arbitrary, we just justify it after the fact, is because the oral histories that do go back further than writing, we can't externally confirm. We only have access to whenever the fuck they were written down. And we know some of them did undergo changes, like, the story of the conquest, for example. It was an oral history before it became a written history. And what was eventually written down does not match the archaeological evidence we find. So there were changes in between.
Sounds like a book that I happen to know of.
What? By that fellow who famously does not write books, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Oh look, it's a book with no name on it because it's been redacted. See, folks, this is one of the differences between our community and a lot of what you see on YouTube. You'll see people running around promoting their own stuff. And don't get me wrong, I promote my own stuff too. But like, one of the big differences in our community is that many of us promote each other's stuff. Like, I get nothing from promoting Lil's show or Kip's book, but like, I think they're worth your time,
No.
I like them, and you might too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always up for promoting like everybody else's stuff, so because it's fun. Like, I love this community. We're great. I love it.
Yeah.
1002.
That said, if Dr. Kip ever decides he wants to become a sponsor, I can make an ad that's at least as good as that water ad. Just saying.
I mean,
100 BC, based on
he does have an academy named after him. Well, sort of.
I mean, it's named after someone. You know what? We'll just play the ad for that. It's like 1 minute. It'll be fine.
Meet Kip, named after a biblical scholar, holds 0 degrees, yet remains deeply authoritative. At Kip Academy, she teaches advanced disciplines like ethical trait distribution, comparative couch theology, and vigorous face licking. Questioning authority is encouraged. Not all treats are created equal. Each snack undergoes rigorous evaluation using the sniff, lick, and stare methodology. Some are rejected, some are accepted. Some are declared non-canonical. Ask Kip about theology. Ask Kip about life. Ask Kip if you should go outside. She will not answer, but she will judge you. Kip, named for a scholar. Correct about vibes.
Now issuing PH dogs.
Hell yeah. Sign up for your PH dog. Well, sign your dog up for a PH dog, I suppose. The most educated of dog. No dogma. Just all right, I'll stop.
Clay tablets from ancient Mesopotamia. These tablets survive because clay, once fired, is extremely durable. It does not rot, it does not dissolve easily, it doesn't really care about time. But this creates an assumption that often goes unnoticed, that writing began on materials designed to last thousands of years. However, history tells us that is almost certainly false. Most writing throughout history was temporary, practical, and disposable. Notes, lists, tablets.
Because people back then were much like people today. Most of what we write is not permanent. We just scribble notes on the backs of envelopes and whatnot. Granted, they didn't have the same paper, but again, humans will write on literally anything. And if you're just writing a quick note, remember to pick up goat milk at the market, you don't need to inscribe that on a fucking tablet.
Please, reminders. You don't engrave your grocery list into stone. You scribble it onto something.
Wow. It's like prophecy or something.
Cheap, light, and replaceable. And ancient people did the same. They used wood, wax, leather, bark, and plant fibers, materials that archaeology almost never recovers. So when historians say this is the earliest writing, what they are really saying is this is the earliest writing that didn't decay. And once you realize
durable writing, stuff that lasts. I mean, obviously, the stuff we're going to find in history is the stuff that lasts. But that's an important thing to keep in mind whenever you're looking at historical stuff, whether you're an anthropologist or a paleontologist or whatever you're studying history for, whatever your discipline, is that what we find is not all that there was. That depending on the culture and the time and the technology and the circumstances of what ended that culture, you're only going to find a percentage of what there was. And you can deduce and infer a bunch of things from what you find, but you're never going to find all of what there was. Probably not even a significant fraction. We're doing our best with scraps, folks, and we need to keep that front and center.
That you're forced to ask a much bigger question. What happens to this timeline when we look at societies that were complex, long before durable writing appeared? To explore this problem properly, we need to look at a site that genuinely rewrote the archaeological rulebook, Göbekli Tepe. It dates to around...
Behold, I told you we'd go back, and we did it before the hour mark, too.
Woohoo!
9,600 BC, long before farming, cities, or writing. And yet, what we find there is astonishing.
There have been some recent developments that may not have actually been before farming, just before farming reached this region, but that's another story for another time. Kelly, Detroit Atheist Queen, 24/7, member for 4 months, uses a member chat to say, I will always support my Java and Jug sisters. Woohoo! Hell yeah. Do I have an ad for Java and Jugs? I think okay. The ad is also the intro, and it's set up for the TLDR. I don't have one set up for this channel, but I really should have one. I should. It would be neat. But yay, we do. Do join us Mondays at 9 a.m. for Java and Jugs on this channel, on the Damn Show. Often, I think almost always on Lil's channel, and of course the actual Java and Jugs channel, which is at Java and Jugs. We seize the means of production and broadcast widely, and quite often on Kelly's channel too, for that matter. So yeah, we're kind of everywhere. We haven't nailed down. What's that?
I was going to say I just put up a short last night about me going a little nuts over puppies on Java and Jugs.
Puppies!
Puppy!
Well, Lil's a little excitable. What are you gonna do if you do ever get your mermaid thing rocking? Are you gonna give the dog scuba gear or something? Like, how are you gonna handle that?
I'll figure it out. I mean, they are water dogs, so I mean, Kip is definitely a water dog. She's half lab, half Newfoundland, so
okay. Fair enough. But yeah, we haven't nailed down the topic for next week's show yet. And I really need to get on that because we generally have to have it done. Well, we don't have to have it done until we go live. But like I try to have it done by Friday so that we can put the link for Monday's show up before Chris wraps on the Damn channel, because a lot of people like to watch on the Damn channel in that normal time slot. So, we'll work on it. But one thing at a time. For now, Göbekli Tepe.
Göbekli Tepe contains massive stone pillars, some weighing more than 10 tons, arranged in carefully planned circular enclosures.
Your mama weighs more than 10. Never mind.
This was not accidental construction. It required organization, coordination, and long-term planning on a large scale. You don't quarry, transport, carve, and erect stones like this without shared knowledge and structured communication. And that's
But do you need writing for that? Like you could write down on a piece of paper, 4 cubits long or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But you could just memorize that too, Or you could have like you could cut the stone at the quarry, bring it to your site, and then have like the architectural master recut it on site. And since we know, for example, from Göbekli Tepe, which was gradually constructed over multiple generations spanning centuries, it wasn't all the same. Like one building would have one architectural style with certain kinds of T-pillars and so on. And then the next building would be completely different because they all had different builders and no unified plan. That's one of the reasons it's not considered a city, because there was no plan. It was just people randomly adding on stuff generation after generation.
Mm-hmm.
Where Göbekli Tepe becomes especially interesting, because carved into these pillars are repeated symbols and motifs. Animals, abstract markings, consistent imagery appearing across multiple structures. That's repetition matters, because repetition suggests intention, and intention...
Well, intention itself isn't enough, but the representation, the symbology, and more importantly, whether specific information is communicated successfully.
Mm-hmm.
Suggests meaning. Assyriologist Irving Finkel has argued that when you look closely at the imagery from Göbekli Tepe, you begin to see something that looks less like decoration and more like a symbolic system. In a conversation...
Okay, so this leads us into the next video, and there's a lot more to be said here because this person breaks down what was said, but I want to get to what he actually said. But first, who the fuck is Irving Finkel? Is he another one of these woo-woo people who hangs out with Joe Rogan? What's going on? So let's find out. Irving Finkel, very old dude. Cool. He's known for the discovery of the tablet with the Great Flood narrative, suggesting a, what the hell is that word? Coracle-shaped ark? A small, rounded, lightweight boat traditionally used in Wales, Ireland, particularly on Queen's. He translated a Gilgamesh adjacent tablet that has the instructions for how to build a round arc type boat, which appears to be I realize Gilgamesh says a cube shaped arc, but whatever. Yeah, that was the thing he did. So another arc story, but he did a bunch of other stuff too. He also translated a tablet that the British Museum had for like over 100 years that had the rules for a game played in the kingdom of Ur. And then 4 centuries, he's not that old, 4 decades later, somebody unearthed a game board that corresponds to that game that he translated the rules for. He did a video for it on YouTube, on I forget which channel, where he and another Assyriologist actually play the game because we have a game board and we have the rules from thousands of years ago in the lost city of Ur. It's so fucking wild. But the point is, he's not just an Assyriologist. He's not just a linguist. He is a philologist, which is the study of language in oral and written historical sources, which I'll just read the description. It's the intersection of textual criticism, literary criticism, history, and linguistics with strong ties to etymology. So it's more the study of whole language systems rather than where a linguist studies the language,
I totally have to do a slight tangent and brag on my oldest son as he read about that board game, actually made one, and then made all of us play it with him.
You too have played the royal game of Ur.
Yes, I have. And I totally kicked his ass. But yeah, it's like my oldest son was like, oh, holy shit. And he was totally, I thought I was the crafty one, which true, I am. But I was just like, hey, I pass on to my son too. I'm pretty damn proud of that.
Hell yeah. That's pretty. And also thank an astronomer, because that copy of the rules that Finkel translated was inscribed. It was a new copy. We'd already had copies of the rules from before, but nobody could make heads or tails of the damn thing because it was so vague. It was like rules for Monopoly that are, written like top hat, go, go. you know, when it really should say move the top hat piece to go, you know, something. It was written in a way such that it only made sense if you were already familiar with the concepts. Like as a Monopoly player, you know what go means, but if you don't know the rules, you don't know what go means. So it was a Babylonian astronomer who wrote down this much more detailed description of the rules, such that Finkel was able to decipher them into a playable version. So thank astronomers for the oldest fucking board game. But the point is, Finkel is actually the real deal. He does not appear to be a woo peddler. And this is a clip from the interview that our friend Brandon here was referring to. This is the portion he's talking about, but it's part of a much longer interview where Finkel actually talks about all the normal historical stuff, like how we found cuneiform tablets, how cuneiform developed, and the historical significance of having historical records and all the cool things. But today, we're focusing on the part that conveniently is in this clip, this hypothesis that deviates from the normal scholarship. Could there be writing that's older? Let's see what they cover here.
Do you think it's possible we might find much older cuneiform type tablets?
Or pictographic type tablets before the cuneiform, and it's drawing type. And I'll tell you why. Because there's this marvelous site in Turkey called Göbekli Tepe.
Oh, yeah.
You know about Göbekli
Yes,
Tepe?
of
Well,
course.
everybody knows about the buildings and the architecture.
Everybody knows about, I mean, in fairness, there's still a lot of people who don't know, right? Like, I mean, as you know, I am a nerd. I didn't hear about it until Milo Rossi went there. And it was because, you know, Mini Minuteman from here on YouTube, and also the TikToks, I suppose. He gets very excited about very old stuff. And I love that because people get excited about stuff, you know, the same way Forrest Velka gets excited about weird animal facts. Like, I love weird animal facts. But when people get excited about something, they can take something that you had previously thought was boring, dusty knowledge no one cares about and bring it to life and make you care about it. Your enthusiasm, their enthusiasm drags you along. And that's the thing that Milo is really, really good at. Like, I love old ruins. I fucking love old ruins. But Göbekli Tepe, at the time, it looked like just a few rocks poking out of hillside. And I'm like, meh. I'll check back in 20 years after they've dug something up. But Milo's like, no, come look. And we looked and holy shit, it's cool. So I know other people have been aware of it longer. I know some people are only aware of it every time we do a show about it. Because that's how knowledge spreads. But still, point is, not everybody knows about Göbekli Tepe. But it's fucking cool.
It really is.
Everybody knows about it. If you go all the way through the photographs, which the archaeologists unwisely put online, you will find in the middle of one color plate with lots of other things, a round green stone like a scarab from Egypt. That's to say, it has an arched back and a flat bottom. And on the flat bottom.
Now, as best I can determine, this is the linchpin of this hypothesis. And to be clear, he's posing it as an interesting idea, not a proven fact. It's a thing we can think about, to philosophically question what we mean by written language, to make us really challenge our preconceptions and arbitrary definitions about things. What do we mean, and why should the line be there? That's the point. But still, this is it seems to be the main thing as far as I've been able to determine, which is fascinating because there's going to be a lot of discussion about this wiggly, but also right here at this joint is what looks a lot like a Norse rune, and next to it is something that's sort of like an inverse of the same rune, but also bears a striking resemblance to characters from the, I don't know what the language family is called. Let's say Proto-Asian language family, you know, the Chinese, the kanji, the stuff they write in Korea, which I assume is another flavor of the same sort of language. That kind of letter formation, that taking a pictograph, turning it into letters or phonemes even, It seems to come from that language family. So we've got early representations of all three primary language heritages represented on this single thing. The squiggly thing gives, it looks vaguely serpent-like, but it kind of gives rise to the written languages that use curvy script, like Arabic. You know, we use Arabic stuff. I mean, I realize modern Arabic is even more squiggly, but yeah. The runic scripts from Northern Europe that are much more blocky and straight line cuts and so forth, which is also related to cuneiform, because you're using a stick to poke into clay. You're going to have lines and things, but even then there's still some curves. And then we've got the shapes that eventually turn into Chinese and kanji and so forth. So it's, I don't want to say it's not impossible, because it sounds like a strong hypothesis. This is literally, the thing looks like a thing, you know, it's not evidence of a thing. It's a demonstration of plausibility. It's the first step to forming a hypothesis, not confirmation of a hypothesis, right? But it is a thing that we have to consider. Miranda says it could just as easily be a river as a snake. It's true. It looks to me like there's a little bit of a head, but that could be a lake that's the source of the, or any number of other things. Who is to say?
Yeah, they could.
There are hieroglyphic signs carved in the stone, right? No one said anything about it at all. But it's clear to me, A, that this was a stamp to ratify where the carvings of the signs on clay or some other sealing material would leave an impression. It must be that. So this is about 9000 BC.
Yeah.
So this is the actual proposal, is that this set of symbols is a stamp. It's a seal. Like, think of a royal proclamation. To verify what the scribe had written, the king would press his ring into some wax. The king's seal cannot be duplicated. It's too intricate. Of course, people did, but never mind that. That's what we did instead of a signature. Which implies there were other written things that needed a seal applied. There was not just non-durable writing, but writing that needed a seal to verify its authenticity. And that's a fascinating concept. Now, I would counter argue, even if we grant that it definitely is a seal, and I will absolutely bow to Finkel's expertise on this one, that does not mean it has to be writing. It could just as easily go on ingots of metal. I mean, I don't believe the people in Göbekli Tepe had ingots of metal, but you could use the seal as sort of a brand to verify this is pure aluminum or what the fuck ever, you know? Like, there's a bunch of different reasons you might use a seal, not just to certify written declarations or something, you know?
Yeah.
Now, when I was a boy at university, my professor said to me that the reason writing evolved in Mesopotamia because they had complex cities with ziggurats and big buildings and lots of people, and they had to organize everything. And so they invented writing to cope with it. Well, if they had to cope with that in Sumer in 3000 BC, they sure as hell had to do it at Göbekli Tepe, because they'd hardly even begun to finish excavating the sites of Göbekli Tepe. They go on and on like Manchester and Newcastle United. And really, the old rule would be you could not have architecture like that, without that planned and built according to principle with all the different people. You couldn't have that without writing in southern Iraq. So how come suddenly, 7,000 years earlier?
Well, that's a little bit of a mistake, I gotta say, because we know that some of the ancient cities definitely preceded the oldest cuneiform tablets. And I mean the old cuneiform tablets, the stuff where it is just literally tally marks. It's just counts of things. Like, before there's even descriptive words, like 10 blocks. We have lists that are just like 10 and 14 and 40. You know, we don't know what the things it's referencing are because it's just numbers at that point. So we know there were buildings, complex buildings, intentional buildings with precise architecture and definite measurements, and even a city plan before we had writing in that area of the world. And we know it was before there was writing because we see the development of writing in the durable structures on the tablets. If they had real writing in the earliest tablets, we'd see some real writing on the earliest tablets, not just tally marks, you know?
They do it there. And that green stone shows that they had writing. That was an official who sealed this, got the stuff, or whatever it was, or it was his dad's name, or whatever it is, got a wiggly snake and a wiggly this. That is pictographic writing. Maybe even as phonetic writing, I don't know, but it was writing thousands of years before in the south. And that's what I think it is. You know, people came with metal from, or precious stones from Anatolia. They knew that in the south they had lots and lots of stuff. They wanted to trade. They had to communicate. And it's basically like having a cigarette with an
Now, that's another interesting take, is a lot of people are curious why the hell the civilization that seems to be responsible for Göbekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe and a few other smaller similar settlements, well, not even settlements really, but like places where people built stuff, why did they build the stuff there? Because historically humans tend to build things near water, for water source, for trade, etc. And these are like on hilltops in arid regions. Like from Göbekli Tepe, you can see the headwaters of the Euphrates in the distance. And maybe in the past it was closer to the place, but it's still at the top of the damn hill. Like, why are they there? We're not really sure.
Although I am now forever going to call the guy King Wiggly Snake, who that belonged to. That's a good name.
Okay. Yeah, Bree posits it may have been for fortification, and that I mean, it's not a bad idea. There's a lot of Roman structures, European structures that are built in very unfortunate places for practical reasons, but are very secure, either because you can see potential enemies coming for, you know, miles and miles. You'll see an army hours before it arrives. But also for inaccessibility, because if you build on the top of a hill, you always have the high ground, you know? And we know what the high ground means. So there's a lot of potential reasons, and there are benefits, whether those were intentional or just cropped up that way. It's really hard to say. So again, we're trying to understand from the scraps that are left. And we don't even know why Göbekli Tepe and Karahan were mostly filled in with dirt, which is what preserved most of the structure all this time. It couldn't fall down because it was already buried, and it seems to have been buried intentionally. We still don't know why it was buried intentionally, but perhaps part of it was an attempt to preserve something. We can only speculate.
Possibly, yeah.
At this point.
Through the middle. Everybody in the world knows what that means. That they don't know what the word for cigarette is in this language, or cancer, or filter, or tobacco. It doesn't matter. That's pictographic writing. We still use it. And it's above all kinds of mess. And I think that was the prevailing system, because I honestly believe that the people at this time were not stupid. They weren't gorillas. They weren't less advanced than we are. They were probably indistinguishable from what we are. So you have merchants and wanderers and people who see, let's go down the river and see where we end up. And people were looking for money, looking for women, looking for everything. I mean, that's surely how it was. But if you look at those Göbekli buildings with a skeptical eye, how it could be. I mean, the finish of it is astonishing. The structure of it, the vision of it. So the workforce and the tools and the organization. You know, what do they do it with? A megaphone? Your breakfast and all that kind of thing? No way. No way.
So that's a really controversial.
I mean, we do still basically construct skyscrapers with a dude with a megaphone. You know, I mean, it may be an alarm or something, but whatever. A whistle. It's break time. You know, we still do it that way. And also, Finkel seems to have this telescopic effect going on. He's looking at the totality of the ruins of Göbekli Tepe, and he kind of presumes they were all built at the same time, when we know from the archaeological evidence that we have so far, and again, we're reconstructing from scraps, but it seems to be that the totality of the structures there were built over the span of over 1,000 years. It wasn't all made at once. In fact, quite a bit of it could have been made by one person working over the course of their lifetime, going and grabbing a rock and then carrying the rock over and then going and grabbing one more rock and carrying the rock over and placing it next to the first rock and so forth. You know, we just don't know.
At the time of Göbekli Tepe, they.
What's that?
I was gonna say, and humans are weird like that. We would totally do something like that. Just do it one rock at a time.
So, I mean, some people do, even today. Granted, we live in a time where there are more people with more privilege so that they don't have to worry about hunting and gathering. Their food is just covered, so they can do weird things like build buildings one rock at a time. But every so often, we'll see a news story about some random person who built an entire mansion one stone at a time by hand, by himself over the course of 30 years or whatever.
Yeah, what is it? The Coral Castle, I think it's in Florida. That guy, like, he built like an entire like his entire property is all like coral that he constructed, like that he moved and like carved himself and stuff. It's, I want to say from the 1920s. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but it was actually really cool.
Okay, Coral Castle was indeed built by hand by one man, Edward Lead Scullin, between 1923 and 1951 in Florida. Weighing just 100 pounds and standing just over 5 feet tall, he single-handedly carved, moved, and erected 1,100 tons of limestone using only homemade basic tools and pulleys. He worked mostly at night and claimed to know the secrets of the Egyptian pyramid builders.
So do we.
I mean, we know some of the things. Now let's see. I'm trying to find like a really good picture, and I'm not really finding one. Okay, so it's sort of like a temple-ish. It's not a proper castle, but it's kind of temple-ish. I think, I'm not sure if these are crescent moons or wrenches or what the deal is, but it's just rocks stacked one next to the next, you know?
Yeah, which is like, I remember hearing about that years ago, and I'm like, that is actually really cool.
Yeah, it's quite doable. But again,
actually, it kind of looks like a solar system, because like one of the ones looks like a plant with rings around it.
Yeah. Andrew says that the Coral Castle doesn't have indoor plumbing. I'm not interested. That's valid. And I saw you asked earlier about indoor plumbing. I don't know about Göbekli Tepe, but Karahan does seem to have one of its newer buildings. And we know it's newer because it has right angle edges, and that apparently is like an innovation that happened somewhere over the centuries. But I'm not 100% sure. I've never been to the site. I only have the scraps of the scraps that make it to the internet. But the way the building is set up, it looks a lot like a bathhouse that we see in later cultures. And to have a bathhouse, it helps a lot to have running water in some form. So I suspect they had some kind of aqueduct system, but I don't know.
May have been already a writing system.
It was, because the thing is about it that it's to ratify. It's not just a squiggle on a pot and you can say, oh, that's just a piece of this is a finished thing with a flat surface. You press it down, so you have some contract, you have some building arrangement, we paying for these bricks, whatever it was, and the official person had to squash it down, and it leaves the impression. I mean, I am a great believer.
But again, that's not the only reason you use a seal. You know, the reason coins have like faces and shit in them, to verify the authenticity of the metal in the coin, right? It's the royal or the government or whatever putting its actual steel stamp of approval on the money. In you know, the last couple thousand years, we've mostly used people's faces to represent which country it's from, because humans have been illiterate for most of that time, most humans anyway. So it's easier to have like, this has Caesar's face on it, it's a Roman coin. This has, you know, Helen of Troy's face on it, so it's an Anatolian coin or whatever. But it's putting the seal of approval on that coin, saying you're getting pure metal, whether it's gold or silver, copper, whatever. But it was because of the metal's utility. It's a whole thing. The point is, this seal, it could well be a seal, But as he pointed out, they were engaged in trade. Yes, writing, math would be useful for that, but it's not strictly necessary. But if you're going to have trade, it's a lot easier to have a currency. Even if you don't have metal per se, because this is a late Neolithic structure, you have some kind of currency. And it's not unthinkable that the same sort of innovation might have occurred to them, that you put some kind of stamp or seal of approval on the currency to verify that it is legitimate.
Mm-hmm. It kind of makes me wonder.
That's what it was, just that it's another viable possibility, and in fact, as far as I can see, makes a bit more sense. But still, Mark says that would have made a good segue for the filters. I know sometimes I get too far ahead of myself. It's fine.
In the Sherlock Holmes as a teaching system for intelligence and rationality and logic and thinking. I read those stories a million times when I was a kid. And the thing about them, one of the things which impresses me most of all was this point quoted by Holmes, not original to him, that it is theoretically possible to infer the Niagara Falls from a raindrop.
That's a powerful statement.
It's a powerful statement. Well, that seal from Göbekli Tepe.
It's a powerful statement, but I don't think that's true.
Yeah, I'm trying to logic my way to it, and yeah, I don't know.
That seems more like no. Holmes was written as a character who is smarter than the author was, which is a thing that you can fake, but you can't actually do. So occasionally Holmes will utter a deepity to make him seem smarter than Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, which it just like Holmes believed in a whole bunch of off-the-wall things, and some of them were just meant to add quirks to his character, but some of them were just factually wrong. Holmes saying something doesn't mean it's automatically true. They're detective stories. Holmes is not some super Einstein character. He's understood to be smart. He's a literary demonstration of the powers of deduction, but also the limitations of deduction. He's more of a philosophy than a physicist. And so for him to say you can deduce Niagara Falls from a raindrop, well, then why did no one do it? Over thousands and thousands of years, Europeans, even already having the knowledge that waterfalls existed, didn't deduce there was a whole other continent in the Western Hemisphere, and somewhere on that continent was Niagara Falls. Because there's not actually the information to make that deduction,
Is a raindrop from which I infer writing. And it's perfectly possible they all wrote on flat leaves. After all, in many parts of the world, that's what happens. So, for example, in the Indus Valley, people write the most abject nonsense about the Indus Valley writing system, but all we have is seals, basically. So they are also for ratification purposes, and they have the name of the owner in 3 or 4 or maybe 5 signs, and it's probably me, son of my dad, or milkman, or whatever it is. And it's obvious that they had writing on a perishable material. They can't just have had inscribed stone seals. And many parts of India today write on palm leaf. Why should it be any different? So people think, well, just because it's now, it wouldn't be then. But actually, that argument is utterly, utterly fallacious, because the process of evolution is stymied left, right, and center by inertia. Inertia is nearly as strong as evolution. And this is something that the people who talk about progress and ideas have no idea about.
First of all, your whole line of work, you're making me realize is...
I want to hear more about that thought. Okay, this is a tip for interviewers. Do not cut off the guest when they're on a roll. Let them cook. That's why you have them on, is to get the brilliance that their brain uniquely has. I want to hear more about evolution versus inertia. This is an interesting idea. What point was he building towards by bringing out that comparison? There's more there, and I want it.
It's kind of like Sherlock Holmes type of process. The deciphering of the language, archaeology of taking those pieces of evidence and trying to reconstruct a vision of that world. And now you're making me realize that even all the cuneiform tablets we have is just a raindrop compared to the waterfall of thousands of years of humans.
We have a lot, but it's nothing.
Right. That, like we've been saying since the start of the episode, what we have are scraps compared to the totality of the library that once existed, or more precisely, existed over the course of human history, because there was never a point where the totality of all human writing existed simultaneously. The Library of Alexandria was close, but also remember, there were a lot of different Alexandrias, and they all had their own libraries. So there's that.
Yeah.
But, you know, details. Yeah, maybe they were stamps, but maybe in India, they were using stamps to authenticate writing on palm leaves. Sure, absolutely. But maybe they also were using them to certify a fruit as coming from their estate. The same way we brand cattle and things like, this is from my place. Or there's fucking eggs now that have stamps on them, you know? A certain producer, I think it's called Eggland's Best or something here in the US.
Yeah.
They stamp the eggs themselves to show that the eggs are quality certified. It could just be a quality control thing. And I will grant that writing your name, whether in symbolic form or stylized form or whatever, such that people know that it's you, it's sort of a pictograph in the same way that stamping Caesar's head on a coin is conveying information. It is tangible writing, kind of, but there's no language connection, right? Similar thing in this case. It's kind of halfway between a picture and writing, because you don't actually need language. You don't even need to speak the same language to understand a pictograph that represents a manufacturer's name or an owner's name or a point of originator's name or a merchant's name or a ruler's name or whatever. You just have to recognize it, and it's recognizable. So it serves that purpose without necessarily requiring language, which means it doesn't have to be writing, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm arguing with
That's
super
that's a good
dude
point.
by proxy, but still.
Mhm.
I got a skeptic. It's what I do.
I gotta say, one of the coolest things, and this is a slight tangent, but it keeps popping into my head. One of the coolest facts I ever learned about writing is, of course, you think of the clay tablets and like all this other stuff. But think about like in the like ancient, like especially like Greek and Roman days, how did people just take like quick notes like we would on a post-it note? They used wax tablets. And it's just like, that is so simple, but most people don't even think of that. Like it's like the perfect solution, and it's so simple until it melts in the heat, but still.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point, because humans are very innovative, and sometimes we come up with technologies that just don't persist. A lot of things from ancient times do persist, but a lot of things don't. Even in our own lifetimes, if you show a 8-track tape to a Gen Z person, they'll be very confused. We've seen memes on the internet of a Gen Z person finding out that in the 90s, people would burn CDs to woo their crush. And they're like, is this some kind of techno Wiccan ritual? Like, did you burn CDs? Like, what? You people scare me. Like, they don't get it, because the technology didn't persist. It got replaced by something more useful, more practical. Of course, the same thing happened in the ancient world. They did things that we not only do not use, but would not think of because of the technology we have instead, you know?
My one of my sons actually asked me, I guess it was a year or two ago, he's like, Mom, when you were growing up, did you have CDs? Because they found like they found a big binder, and they found all the like liners and stuff in it, but I didn't have the CDs in there because I don't know what I did with them. But it was just like, So it was just like it's really weird. I've come across a few of those shorts lately that are like, you put 10 fingers up and take them down if you remember these things, and yeah, like it's the fact that technology does not always persist is just absolutely crazy, because of course you want to sit there and think like the words that you put out there are going to exist forever. These videos will be out for a long time, but they're probably not going to persist for 5,000 years.
I mean, maybe Google will build like some kind of quantum hard drive and put it up in space. Oh, maybe even attach it to a von Neumann probe, right? Ooh, that could actually be really fun. A von Neumann probe, for anybody who doesn't know, on tangents upon tangents with this one. It's a space probe that's meant to go interstellar, that duplicates itself. It goes to the next solar system and it collects resources from like mining asteroids or whatever. It doesn't matter how. And it builds a copy of itself right down to the software, right? And it backs up its own memory so that the new copy knows everywhere that the preceding probes have already been, so it doesn't duplicate its efforts. And it also duplicates all the other data too. So it takes forever because interstellar travel is a very lengthy process, but over thousands of years, these probes could gradually spread across the whole of the Milky Way. And so you could have like a futuristic hard drive that contains the entire catalog of YouTube, for instance. And so this very video may be passed on through these von Neumann probes. But in the replication process, no matter how precise you're doing it, even if you have 3D printers that can lay each specific atom in place, there's always going to be slight imperfections from copy to copy. And this inevitably results in an evolutionary style process where you'll have an accumulation of errors resulting in different properties. Sometimes it'll be improvements, but often not. And they'll get passed on through the generations. And so, 1,000 copies or 10,000 copies down the line, by the time a probe makes it all the way around the galaxy and gets back, there may be a version of this video where, Lil and I have switched names or something, who knows? It could be interesting. Now, did Lil lose signal or did I? Because I still see the clock counting and I still see chat moving. Let me see here. Okay, looking at it on YouTube, I can see Lil spinning and I'm still here. So I'm guessing it's Lil that lost signal, but I don't know for sure. I'll go with that hypothesis for the time being, though, and we'll go on a little bit.
Comparison with what existed. But not only that, see, we don't have to decipher anymore. We can read Akkadian or Babylonian and Sumerian pretty well fluently. That's not a problem. So the information which you can get from these sources, especially 3 millennia of sources, is very, very substantial. Very substantial. But it means that Assyriologists have the inbuilt idea that what we have is something like all there ever was, which is absurd. For example, there's a period...
That is an excellent point. As we've been trying to reiterate this entire episode, just because what we have preserved now is a fraction of what there was, doesn't mean that's representative of all there ever was. Like we can deduce that the clay tablets we have are a fraction of the totality of clay tablets, but we cannot deduce there were only ever clay tablets,
Called the Earth 3 period, where people lived in city-states. They wrote very small account tablets by the 1,000, and there were 2 or 3 major cities where this is the way they lived. People had to bring tithes and offerings, and everything was recorded by what I always refer to and people sympathize with as the ancestors of the inland revenue, because everything had to be written down so that some schmuck could check it and fill out the ledger, and some other schmuck above him could okay it.
Well, I mean, you needed to write down financial stuff for tax purposes, because if you're going to run a kingdom, you need some kind of tax system to finance the damn thing. And to make sure the taxes are fair, you have to write them down so other people can check your work,
Oh, yeah.
So there's
that
no...
note, I am going to go try and fix my internet. And I've got some other stuff that I need to do before politicality, but pop over to politicality after this. And I will see you guys tomorrow.
Hell yeah.
Bye.
Toodles, Lil. Yep, this stream will take you over to Lil's immediately after. If I do perchance have to run sooner, the stream will still take you over there. It'll just be early, and it'll give you the opportunity to click the notify button so that you can, you know, receive a notification when Lil does go live. But yes, honestly, it's wise to take a break between shows, not just to like get things set up for the next show, but go do the things that we as biological people need to do, like refill our coffees and things. I'm often bad at that. When I do one show to the next, I'll just like not refill my coffee, and sometimes the consequences are quite dire. But I digress. The point is, Lil's show is up next, so stay tuned.
Funny business or no mistakes. Now, the thing is, there are thousands of those tablets written in about 2100 to 2000 BC. Thousands of them, about the size of a box of matches. So people like to generalize about the Sumerians at this time of the world. But they probably all came out of 2 rooms, because they were dumped when they were no longer needed in some kind of room. And the archaeologists in the 19th century came down on these, and then all the locals came and they dug them up and they sold them all over the place, and they've gone all over the world, thousands and thousands of them, out of probably 2 storage rooms, which is not a whole culture or a whole country or the
Right, that's sort of like an archive. It's like we were talking about with Deviant yesterday, that the majority of the Amarna letters seem to have come out of like one room in the former Pharaoh's palace. Were there more? Was there other stuff? Probably. If you have a civilization where your hard records are literally clay tablets, once the record is no longer necessary, I could see people like just shoving it in an archive in case it's ever needed in the future, but it's not expected to be needed. So you just shove it in the archive. So it's out of the damn way. Like, you have to keep the record, but you don't have to keep it where it's in the way, because tablets take up space. I mean, papers take up space. Look at any person's desk ever. Stacks of papers, right? Tablets magnify that by orders of magnitude.
A whole history or their belief systems. So our view of it is slewed by the nature of the material. And sometimes the material is opulent and benevolent, but not always. And sometimes the people who work with slewed material don't even realize how slewed it is. I mean, it's quite remarkable.
So you, in all your time of studying cuneiform tablets, do you sometimes late at night get a glimpse of the waterfall? Like, can you imagine?
Yes, I can imagine. I can imagine easily.
But here's the thing. Are you deducing the waterfall, or are you imagining the waterfall? And even if we someday find a waterfall, does that mean you've prophesied it in some fashion, or you coincidentally happen to be correct? Like, we see this with a lot of holy texts, right? Like, there's a whole lot of things that people claim is fulfilled prophecy, but really it's just coincidental similarity. No? Is it really a deduction?
Because once in a while a library is discovered. In the 1850s, at Nineveh, which was the Assyrian capital, there was a fat king of the world, called Ashurbanipal, and he had a fantastic library, and he promoted it. He impounded tablets, he had them brought to Nineveh. He wanted all the prevailing knowledge and all knowledge from before under one roof. It was a kind of like Alexandria thing. So he was a trained scholar, and this is what he did. And they found it in the 19th century. They dug it up, Layard. And
that's fucking incredible. Like a proto-Library of Alexandria. Now, for that to work, you have to reach a point in your society where a person of some education would have a reasonable belief that all human knowledge might be on a tablet somewhere. That implies broad literacy, as well as access to tools and things, and a long record of scholars writing their expertise in things in order for a person to have that general impression. So just knowing this thing existed tells us a bunch about the culture at the time. They had scholars, they had broad literacy. Apparently they had something resembling libraries, even if they were private collections or something. That's pretty neat.
Those people. So what did they find? They found the tablets higgledy-piggledy all over the floor of a huge room and in the corridors and everything, and lots of them broken and lots of them burnt. So ever since then, until really quite recently, Assyriologists have spent all their people who work on these Nineveh towns spend all the time joining the bits together. And you have the story about Gilgamesh and the goddess who falls in love with him in the garden, and she wants to seduce him, and ... You can't find the bit, so you look for another bit, and you look for another bit, and gradually they piece together the literature. And the assumption has always been that if you put them all together again, you'll have the whole library. But it's the absolute opposite, because what happened was that the Babylonians in the south, in my opinion, they worked hand in glove with the Elamites from Iran. They had a pincer movement, and they beat Assyria. They conquered Assyria, and they ran through the capital, and they set fire to everything, pinched all the women, and took all the jewelry and all the gold. And people say that in a fit of pique, they destroyed the library. But they wouldn't destroy the library because it was the giant brain from which the Assyrians ran a world empire, and it had all the knowledge in the world. They destroyed that. They spoke the...
They might have. I get why a scholar would be reluctant to think that people would ever do that. They would take this clear source of power and just smash it out of pique. But then here we are in the modern day, where the current administration is deleting huge chunks of data from our own scientific archives. This isn't even a conquest of a conquered enemy. It's our own archives, and we're just erasing our scientific knowledge left and right. Why would anyone do that? It doesn't make sense. Well, because like stupidity is a thing that people do. We see it every now and then throughout history. The Nazis burned their own scholarly libraries because they didn't want the unclean knowledge tainting the German population. The Egyptians at a certain, well, I mean, it was the Christians, but Christians in Egypt at the time burned Hypatia and the library at Alexandria, which at the time was considered to be the sum of almost all human knowledge. You know, people, extremists, they go through these phases where they're like, knowledge bad. So they just start smashing things. Humans are not rational creatures, not all the time.
Same language, they had the same writing system, they'd have taken them all safely home, cart after cart after cart. And I think what's left there is duplicates and broken things, the things that got drops and everything, and that's what everyone thinks is it. So this is also it's a controversial point.
You're just nonstop starting trouble.
It's common sense.
You're going to get both of us canceled.
Again, I really, really appreciate how much Finkel has done over his career, but it's common sense is not science. It's not good scholarship. It's not academic. In fact, most of the worst ideas we've ever heard, people just throw up their hands and go, it's common sense. Fuck.
But you see the thing, it's predicated on the assumption that what we have is only what there was. And this is such a fallacy. It needs to be attacked left, right, and center.
All right, so that's it for this friend. It is an interesting idea, though, that the seal could be representative of some kind of pre-writing writing. And there may be something to that. It's not completely unthinkable, although it may take a form that exceeds our understanding of what writing means. And maybe that would lead to our redefinition of writing as a concept. Or maybe we would classify it as something else entirely. In sort of the same way that like proto-hieroglyphs are also just drawings, you know? It's hard to say at this point. And we also need a lot more data because it's purely speculative at this point. Who's to say? But we can go back to, since we have a few more minutes, we can go back to our Brandon friend and hear a bit more about what he thinks about the situation.
Conversation with Lex Friedman, Finkel points out a lesser-known artifact from the site, a small, rounded, green stone. It has an arched back and a flat underside, similar in shape to later stamp seals from Egypt and Mesopotamia, and carved into its flat surface are what appear to be hieroglyphic-style signs. Finkel argues that this...
Oh, this is so bad. Carved into its surface it's a thing that looks like a thing, and on it, there's things that look like a thing. Resemblance doesn't mean it's the same thing, you know, like to an outsider, a toothbrush and a chisel kind of look alike, but you don't brush your teeth with a chisel, you know?
object was likely a seal designed to be pressed into clay or another soft material to leave an impression. In other words, a tool used for ratification, for marking ownership, for approving transactions, for formalizing agreements. And according to the dating of the site, this object belongs to around 9000 BC. Now, it's important to be very clear here. This interpretation is controversial. It's not the mainstream position. But Finkel's reasoning is not just casual speculation. He argues that seals of this kind...
Well, no, okay. It's speculation. Because he's a scholar, it's not casual. But that doesn't mean it is scholarly speculation. Bree says, I sharpen my teeth with a chisel. You know, we had a thing that came up on the preceding show. We were talking about, Ryan mentioned, there's like a Jehovah's Witness scripture that says something along the lines of, the child who dies from want of blood will be saved and raised again in the eternal life, kind of thing. And this is one of the ways that the elders of the past have justified not giving transfusions to children. If you die from want of blood, you'll be saved and you'll be raised. And in the chat, we were talking about how one of the ways that we know Christianity is not true is we don't see the eternal people who do not taste death that were promised by Jesus, right? Like that's a promise Jesus himself made, and we don't see it. Technically that's a black swan thing. We haven't seen a black swan. That doesn't mean there aren't black swans, but no one sees any of them, It's a bit of a problem. But then there's vampires. Vampires do have that eternal life thing, and it fits with that scriptural passage. If you die from want of blood, maybe it's talking about vampires, and vampires are the fulfillment of Jesus's promise. So maybe this whole blood of Jesus thing, we've all been taking very wrong all this time. Just throwing that out there.
Are not decorative objects. They are functional. They exist to leave repeated impressions, and repeated impressions imply a shared system of meaning. In Finkel's words, this seal is not just a squiggle on a pot. It is a finished object made for a specific bureaucratic purpose. And if that...
if I were to speculate myself, I might offer that the fact they had seals means they didn't need clay tablets, because while a personal seal, something that has great value in that it's putting your name on something, your personal stamp, your insignia, whatever, and also you reuse it a lot, so it's more likely to be like made of stone or something. Cool. That opens the possibility for effectively something like typesetting. Like, why would you spend all your time making each letter by hand by poking sticks into clay when you can carve letters or concepts or ideas in a written form onto seals and then use the seals? It would be unreasonable for our keyboards, for example, to have the as a key, and it is a key, and is a key, and key as a key. Like, we'd have tens of thousands of keys. But here's the thing. In Chinese, they do that because they don't have specific letters. They have phoneme-based concepts that meld together to form words, sort of like our letters do, but there's tens of thousands of them. And so Chinese keyboards have to be set up in a certain way where there's something akin to the shift key, the control key, and the alt key, giving each set of keys access to a different set of characters that you can then blend together. And it's a whole freaking thing. The point is, we're using something similar today, where we're effectively applying stamp upon stamp upon stamp to form a word using symbols. There is no reason ancients who had access to symbols for name seals couldn't do the same thing with other concepts. And it would be, in some ways, faster and more efficient. For stuff like laws and holy scripture and even letters to other kings, writing them in stone makes a great deal more sense. It's a lot more durable. But for day-to-day use, then using standard seals, perhaps themselves made of clay or something less durable than carved into stone like that seal, might be a way to go. Again, I'm speculating, but it could explain a lot, and it does have some utility to it.
Interpretation is correct, it would suggest a form of pictographic writing thousands of years earlier than traditionally accepted. But Finkel also raises a broader point. When he was a student, he was taught that writing emerged in Mesopotamia because cities became too complex to manage without it. Large populations, monumental architecture, and long-distance trade created problems.
Well, no, I don't think that's true. I don't think that the discovery of writing would have impeded the development of cities. Rather, the discovery of writing added a utility that facilitated the growth of cities. They were going to grow no matter what, but discovering a new tool just made it better and easier to administer at the very least, because the cities were already growing before there was the writing,
Of organization. The traditional argument is that writing was invented in Mesopotamia as a practical solution to manage that growing complexity. But then Göbekli Tepe thus presents a problem. Because if that level of organization required writing in Sumer around 3000 BC, how was it achieved at Göbekli Tepe 7,000 years?
The Gates of Babylon, another tangent I know, but every time I see it, I think, what a beautiful gate. And that's a thing, right? Because, you can't have a beautiful gate if you're constantly at war. And so having a beautiful gate or monuments to greatness of the city or the king or whatever, all of these things, they require a certain level of stability, perhaps even peace and prosperity to pull off. You have to have prosperity to be able to afford this sort of thing. And that leads me to the idea of civic art, or even art itself. It creates a sense not just of civic pride, but also comfort, stability, and security. Because when you see a gate with that much art on it, this is a peaceful city that you're not likely to get killed in a war at, because look at all the art they made. It must be a peaceful city, There's something to that, I think.
But then Göbekli Tepe thus presents a problem. Because if that level of organization required writing in Sumer around 3000 BC, how was it achieved at Göbekli Tepe 7,000 years earlier? You don't organize a workforce.
Again, that's a cart before the horse thing. Doing the thing doesn't require the thing. It's like building a barn, right? Much easier with metal nails, but you can do it without metal nails because we did it for hundreds of years before we had metal nails, Looking at a modern barn and saying it requires metal nails, that's because that's in the design for that barn. It's not because you have to have metal nails to make a barn. You can use wooden nails, or you can do joining that doesn't require nails at all. That requires a higher level of craftsmanship, but it can be done,
Of this scale with a megaphone and good intentions. The finish of the architecture is too precise. The planning is deliberate. The vision is coherent. Someone was coordinating this effort. Now again, to be clear.
No. First of all, like we previously discussed, each structure was built separately, saying someone was coordinating. This is the same kind of magical bullshit thinking that gives us young Earth creationists, right? Look at the trees and look at the beetles and look at this. Clearly, one thing was in charge of all of this and orchestrating it all. No, that doesn't follow. You can have many, many different overseers and site supervisors. And in fact, given the span of time this construction took place over, you would have to, because humans, despite what the Bible says, did not live to 900 years old. Holy shit. But also it's that argument from ignorance. I don't know the thing, therefore I do know the thing, and I'm just going to make up a thing. The thing you made up is not the default position. Just because you have an overseer doesn't mean you have to have writing. You can't do the overseer job without a name tag that says overseer on your vest, That doesn't actually make sense.
This does not prove that full writing existed at Göbekli Tepe, but it strongly suggests that symbolic systems capable of recording and communicating information were already in use. And remember, only 10% of this site has been excavated, so what else could be hiding beneath the ground? Imagine if an equivalent of the Rosetta Stone, the one artifact that allowed us to translate Egyptian hieroglyphs, lay hidden in the unexcavated 90% of Göbekli Tepe.
That's not unthinkable. Because another cool thing about the Amarna letters is that we found seals that are bilingual, right? Like these kinds of seals are like rollers, and you put them against parchment or something, which is another reason we know that seals were often used for non-durable writing purposes, because this wasn't like a ruler seal or whatever. It was just a quick introductory passage written in both the Egyptian tongue at the time and what was it, Aramaic or something, whatever language it was. It's written in both. It's the same words in both, the same way the Rosetta Stone is written in 3 different languages, but it's the same passage over and over. And you take the seal and you'd roll it on papyrus and it would print out. Like they literally had printed writing. It just wasn't movable type. It just wasn't a printing press, right? Like you'd still carve the thing into the seal and then use the seal to print out copies. You in a way, you had primitive copiers. That's way more advanced than we give these people credit for, and yet there's the evidence right there. The point is, there were these seals that were the same thing was written in both languages, partly to describe to others what was going on who spoke one language but not the other, but also partly, possibly not intentionally, but to function sort of like Rosetta Stone, saying the same thing in 2 different languages, so that you have a shot of understanding the other language, or at least deciphering part of it. It's not unthinkable if this was indeed a trading hub and there were multiple languages involved, like the northern Anatolians who were harvesting cool, pretty shiny rocks out of the mountains, and the southern Anatolians who were doing the fishing, and they wanted to trade the fish for the pretty shiny rocks. If they had different languages, absolutely reasonable. If you would have a sign, perhaps printed on wood, for instance, that may or may not keep over the many centuries. Maybe you'd have something in both languages. Or if there's 5 languages, or who knows? It's not unthinkable. What is also not unthinkable, a super chat from Jester, who sends us $2. Thank you, Jester. And says, but if I build my house out of nails, how you? Exactly. It's this thing we do where we project something that happens in the present as an inevitability on the past, when in fact it was just a discovery. Everything we've discovered has been, I don't want to say accidental, because sometimes we were looking for a specific discovery, but almost coincidental. Like in the sense that the things happen at the time they did. Coincidental, you know?
This leads to a natural next question. If early humans were using seals, symbols, or notation systems at this level, then what were they actually writing on? Because to answer that, we need to talk about the physical reality of writing itself. This is where the timeline really begins to unravel, because historically, writing does not survive by...
We're unraveling timelines now. Oh, goodness. Nobody tell the time police.
Default. It survives by accident. And to see why, we need to look at what writing was at.
Well, that's not true either. A lot of writing is preserved specifically because the people at the time think it's worth preserving. Like, you know, for example, the United States Constitution. The citizens of the US are like, oh yeah, we got to preserve this.
Actually made from. In Mesopotamia, where the earliest surviving writing appears around 3100 BC, clay was everywhere. The river plains of the Tigris and Euphrates were full of it, so scribes used what they had. They took damp clay and pressed marks into it with cut reeds, forming wedge-shaped impressions. This is where cuneiform comes from. Once dried in the sun, these tablets became extremely durable, almost indestructible in fact, which is why they survive in such large...
Well, I don't know if I'd say almost indestructible. I know, Sapphire, I'm keeping an eye on the time.
Large numbers even today, thousands of years later. But there's an important catch. Clay tablets are terrible for everyday communication. They're heavy, they're very fragile before they dry, and they're not exactly ideal for sending.
They're kind of, judging by the breaks and cracks, they're kind of fragile after they dry too. But yes, it's not super convenient to write a letter in a tablet and then send it to the friend in the next city or whatever, you know? It's not the best way to do things.
messages. So clay survives not because it was the best writing material, but only because it happened to fossilize well. Almost at the same time, around 3000 BC, the Egyptians solved a very different problem. They needed writing that could travel, so they invented papyrus, a smooth, flexible surface made from strips of a Nile plant, pressed and dried into sheets. Papyrus could be rolled into scrolls, it could be carried, it could be copied, and for over 3,500 years, almost every book in Egypt, Greece, and Rome was written on it. In other words,
the Egyptians weren't the only ones to make this kind of discovery either. As previously mentioned, many other ancient civilizations used similar things, the inside of tree bark and so on. But also, one thing that springs to mind is the Yellow River culture, where I'm not a specialist in that area of the world because being from the United States, European history is the only history worth learning or something. But we keep finding, or more precisely, the Chinese people keep finding, repositories of scrolls that are much older than scrolls have any right to be. And it's fascinating, the kinds of things they're finding in there. It's not just text histories and whatnot, but scholarship and poetry and lost songs that no human has heard for centuries. Very fascinating stuff. Also fascinating, Jester sending us another super chat for $2. Thank you, Jester. Saying they literally thought it was magic. Well, of course they. Gah! I enjoy trying to act out super chats. It doesn't always work, but sometimes it's fun.
World almost overwhelmingly relied on a material that doesn't survive outside of dry deserts. That alone should make us nervous about how complete our record really is. Elsewhere, people used what worked locally. In China, bamboo strips were tied together with thread to form books. Records tell us that they were used as early as 1500 BC, even though the earliest surviving examples are much, much later. In India, palm leaves were used for manuscripts. Early Buddhist texts were written on birch bark. Romans, when cut off from papyrus supplies in Britain, wrote letters on thin wooden tablets. Some of these have actually survived near Hadrian's Wall, including something wonderfully human, a birthday invitation. Now, just imagine how much writing didn't.
Aww. I don't know. They just imagine getting like an invite to a birthday party on a fucking wooden slab. I don't know. It kind of touches me a little.
Survive. Wax tablets were used everywhere from Greece to Rome. They were reusable notebooks. You wrote on them, warmed the wax.
Right, like Lil was talking about. You could make day-to-day notes on wax and then just heat the wax slightly and rub away the note. It was reusable paper. It was less convenient in that, this you can fold up and stuff in your pocket, but it was more useful in that it's reusable. You only need one.
And smooth them flat again. They were designed to vanish, and they did. Later still, parchment appeared, more durable but expensive, used mainly for important texts. But even parchment only became common centuries after writing itself, and then much later, paper appeared in China around AD 100.
Right. The development of parchment and paper and all these things, that's because writing was already prevalent. It's a utility for a thing that's so useful that developing utilities to make that more effective makes sense. You don't develop parchment unless you need something to do with it,
5. It slowly spread westward, and it doesn't reach Europe in.
Mark says it's even more inconvenient on a very hot day. Oh no, my grocery list is melted. What was I supposed to get at the market?
Until the medieval period, and even then, many early papers degrade rapidly. Books from as recent as the 19th century are already crumbling. So here's the uncomfortable truth. For most of human history, writing was done on materials that decay, which means the writing we have is not typical. It's exceptional. It survived because conditions were perfect, or because disaster accidentally.
Well, that's a supposition. We don't know what was typical on the writing we don't have.
Preserved it. Now picture prehistoric writing, not carved in stone, but scratched into bark, or written on leaves, or painted onto skins. Now give it.
That was some weird AI stock footage. I don't. Also, what the fuck is up with this clock? Never mind.
10,000 years. How about 100,000 years? Nothing would remain. And once you understand that, the absence of early writing becomes far less mysterious. But it also raises a much bigger problem. If so much writing is lost even in the historical periods that we know had writing, how reliable is the record that we think we're building our timelines on? And that question leads directly into the issue of survivorship bias. We naturally assume that what survives represents what once existed, but in archaeology, that assumption is almost always wrong. Even in recent periods where writing definitely existed, we recover only a tiny fraction of what was once written. Ancient libraries are a perfect example. We know they existed, we know they held vast collections of texts, but what survives today? Only fragments, references, mentions in other works, sometimes not even the titles. Right?
Oh goodness, yes. Hell, even in the Christian Bible, there's references to other books that no longer exist. It's wild. Like, this is the holy sacred texts that were specifically preserved by the whole culture because they were sacred, and they still lost some of the books. Fuck! Humans are bad at this. So yeah, there's definitely a survivorship bias issue. That's a whole thing that people broadly misunderstand. They say, oh, right, we're only getting data from the survivors. Well, sort of. That's only half of it. It's when you're getting data from the survivors and remembering to account for the data you're not getting from the sources that didn't survive. The classic example is the World War II bomber, right? You get this graph that shows all the places the planes were hit and made back. And the story goes, they started to put armor over those places until someone realized, wait, the places that they're not hit, we're not seeing because the planes that were hit there didn't make it back. So that's where we should be putting the extra armor. And they did, and it improved the survival of the planes. Again, according to the story, it's mostly apocryphal, although there's some truth to it. Similar thing. It's not just remembering that the data we have is only a sample of what survived. It's remembering that what didn't survive is still telling us something, and we have to account for that, or we're going to miss like the whole important picture. It's pretty, it's something. Anyway, I'm glad I could get that. I could articulate that quickly because, folks, it is time to scoot. I appreciate y'all spending the morning with me and helping me survive a couple more hours at the very least. And as always, it's tons of fun. I hope you learned some things. I hope you enjoyed being here. I hope if you made it all this way, you remember to hit the subscribe button and join us because we're here every weekday at 11 a.m. Eastern time, at least for now. And I hope you enjoyed learning together live. All right, let's get over to Lil's. Mwah, toodles. Thanks to all our patrons and top-level members for January. Miranda, Karen Butcher, Jessica the Transmetal Alchemist, Robin Webster, Maya Adkison, Jimmy Tux, Ian Chen, Lilith, Ember Lynn, The Barely Bearable Atheist, Eric Wander, Jason Jacoby, Lil of All Trades, Deviant Outcast, Secular Felinist, Kelly King, the Detroit Atheist Queen, Geo Sam, Thriver Scapegoat, the Godless Engineer, Why Because Weed Bro, and Katie Bluebird. And you can add your name here next month by signing up at patreon.com/betterthanember or by joining Emberships here on YouTube at the Cinder level, which also includes all the custom emojis, tons of member-exclusive content, member-only live streams, and a bunch of other stuff. I deeply appreciate all the supporters who keep this channel going. Thank you so much. Because of you, we're building a wonderful community that I'm very proud of.
Just like a spark that's breaking out, can't make a stop, can't turn back now. We know that there's no room for doubt.